Wires and wildflowers. Noah couldn't remember the last time he'd looked at a tree without checking for a signal. He wasn't even sure if he liked trees, unless they had a QR code taped to them. But here he was, in the middle of Oregon. No cell reception, no Wi-Fi, no power outlets, no escape. He had been voluntarily sentenced, as his assistant put it, to a 2-week digital detox retreat after passing out on the floor of a product launch meeting. The startup he co-founded was bleeding money. His board hated him, and he hadn't slept more than 4 hours in weeks. Now he was here, forced to breathe, forced to exist, and very much forced to smell cows. The retreat wasn't even a spa. It was a damn farm. Day 1 had already been a disaster. He dropped his phone into a compost bin, mistook goat milk for almond milk, and vomited, and got pecked by a chicken named Linda. And then came her. She arrived like she belonged to the earth itself. Wild red curls, sun-kissed skin, boots caked in mud, and a body that made Noah forget, briefly, how to blink. She didn't smile at him. She smirked, as if she'd already sized him up and found him laughable. "You're the tech guy, huh?" she asked, tugging off her gloves with dirt-streaked fingers. Noah tried to straighten his back. "Yeah, Noah Carter. And you are?" "Olive," she said, tossing her gloves onto a bench. "I run this place. You single quotes re... the farmer?" Olive's eyes glinted. Disappointed? Noah hesitated, then realized his gaze had dropped lower than it should have. No, just wasn't expecting someone like you." She stepped closer. Her voice dropped. "Someone like me?" Noah swallowed. Her scent was sweat and lavender. He hated how much he liked it. "I meant, you're younger than I expected." "Uh-huh," Olive said. "Keep digging." That night, Noah lay in the creaky bed of his log cabin, staring at the ceiling fan, turning in lazy circles. He hated the quiet, hated the crickets, hated how loud his mind became without noise to drown it. But mostly, he hated how often he was thinking about her. The days passed slowly, not in boredom, but in unfamiliar stillness. Noah tried to keep himself distracted feeding animals, hauling hay, attempting and failing to fix a leaky pipe. But every task, every pause, seemed to circle back to Olive. She didn't just run the farm, she commanded it. She moved through the fields like she was part of the land, her skin kissed by sun and sweat, her presence grounded, magnetic. He caught himself watching her too often, from behind stacks of crates, through dusty windows, during shared meals. She rarely looked back, but when she did, just a glance, Noah felt it like voltage through his veins. They barely spoke. When they did, it was usually sarcastic, clipped. Olive didn't do small talk. She didn't ask him about Silicon Valley or the apps he helped build. She asked him to shovel manure, or carry bags of feed, or clean goat hooves. And he did it, because she asked. But one evening changed everything. It started with a storm. The rain came down hard cold, unrelenting. The wind howled through the valley. The power went out. Noah stood in the barn, trying to light a lantern, fumbling like an idiot. And then, she was there, wet from the storm, cheeks flushed, curls stuck to her face. "Give me that," she said, snatching the lantern from his hands. He didn't respond. He was staring at her, at the way her shirt clung to her skin. The rain had made her bare, raw, real. "You gonna keep gawking, or help me get the calves inside?" she snapped. They worked in silence, shoulder to shoulder in the mud, rain soaking through every layer. The world had gone gray and chaotic, but he felt strangely centered right beside her. Later, back in the main cabin, they stood by the fireplace, dripping. Olive peeled off her jacket and kicked off her boots. Noah stared at the fire, unsure what to say. She spoke first. "You're not as useless as I thought," he smirked. "And you're not as terrifying as I thought." A beat passed. He turned toward her, found her watching him. The flicker of firelight danced across her face. There was a moment, not an accident, not a joke, a choice. He took a step closer. She didn't move away. The kiss wasn't soft. It wasn't careful. It was hungry, like days of tension had broken all at once. Her hands found his back, pulled him closer. His fingers tangled in her wet hair. She tasted like rain and sweat and something wild. Clothes came off in staggered, fumbling motions. Buttons popped. Skin met skin. The heat from the fireplace seemed to burn brighter with every breath, every touch. On that worn-down rug, they crashed into each other like waves. No grace, just want. It wasn't romantic. It was primal. And yet, somehow, still tender. Afterward, they lay tangled on the floor, bare limbs against bare limbs. The storm still howled outside, but inside, everything had gone quiet. Olive rested her head on his chest, her breath steady. Noah stared at the ceiling, completely unraveled. She broke the silence first. "This doesn't mean anything," she said. He didn't reply, because in his gut, he knew it meant everything. The morning after, sunlight poured into the cabin like an uninvited guest. Noah awoke before Olive. Her body was still tangled in his, breath slow and warm against his skin. For the first time in years, his mind wasn't racing. No deadlines, no messages, no pings. Just her, just silence. He traced her shoulder with his fingertips. She stirred. No words were spoken. She simply stood, dressed, and left the room. No kiss, no backward glance. The next few days were colder. Not the weather, the air between them. Olive kept her distance. Noah didn't push. But he felt the ache of absence every time she looked through him instead of at him. Then came the email. His assistant had managed to reach him through the retreat coordinator. The investors were ready to pull the plug. They needed him back in San Francisco. Now, he sat with it for hours. The city, the company, his former self calling him home. And yet, that night, he found Olive on the hill, watching the sunset. Her hair caught the dying light like fire. She didn't acknowledge him when he sat down beside her. "I got a message," he said quietly. "They want me back. Like yesterday." She nodded, still staring ahead. "Of course they do." He glanced at her. "So, this is it?" She didn't answer. After a long silence, she finally said, "You weren't supposed to matter." The words hit harder than any pitch meeting or product crash ever had. Noah looked at her, really looked. She wasn't cold. She was scared. "I don't want to go back to who I was," he whispered. "But I don't know how to be someone else yet." Olive finally turned toward him. Her eyes were tired, but open. "Then don't decide tonight," she said. "Sleep on it. The land's patient." He did. And in the morning, he stayed. Not forever, but longer than anyone expected. He rebuilt the chicken coop. He planted herbs with Olive in the greenhouse. He still argued with her about absolutely everything, but they laughed more, touched more, loved harder. Their rhythm wasn't soft. It was loud, clumsy, unpredictable, but it was real. And sometimes, when he watched her walk barefoot across the field, Noah thought about the man he had been, glued to screens, running on caffeine and panic. Now he lived among wildflowers and wires he no longer needed. He had finally gone offline and fallen in love.